Hello. Testing.
It's now 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is Frank Cassidy. I'm the acting zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. We have 3 cases scheduled for public hearing tonight. Case 1 is TPENT 1224 00028 Irvington Dispensary on West Irvington Road, which is a request for special exception in the C2 zoning district. Case 2 is TPENT 1224 00029 PCCLT North Linda Avenue, which is a request for rezoning from R2 to O3. And case 3 is TPENT 1024 00020, which is Vacant Lot LLC, East 22nd Street, which is a request for rezoning from SR to RX2. We will do the cases in that order as listed on the agenda. To avoid unnecessary noise and interruptions, please mute your microphone except when you're speaking. As zoning examiner, I conduct rezoning hearings and special exception hearings on behalf of the mayor and council and make findings of fact, which I put into a written report along with my recommendation, which I send to the mayor and council for their consideration and for their final decision. My reports will be based on the information submitted to me, which includes the rezoning application, or in the case of the special exception application, the staff report, all written approvals and protests, all correspondence and testimony given at tonight's public hearing. I'll also include in the public record, or I'm sorry, in the record, all documents submitted to me up to the close of the public hearing. Tonight's proceedings are being recorded. When I call on you to testify, please speak clearly and begin your testimony by stating your name and your address. As mentioned, we have 3 separate hearings tonight. The Irvington dispensary case is a special exception request under the mayor and council special exception procedure. The other 2 cases are rezoning cases. For the special exception case, the process after tonight is that I'll issue a final recommendation to the mayor and council within 5 days after the public hearing is closed. For the 2 rezoning cases, the PCCLT North Linda Avenue and the Vacant Lot LLC East 22nd Street case, I will complete a preliminary report within 5 working days after the public hearing is closed. I will then prepare a final report, which will be issued 2 weeks after the public hearing is closed. If you'd like to receive a copy of any of my recommendations or reports, and you're not listed as a party on one of the cases or on the particular case you want to see, you can send an email to tucsonrezoning@tucsonaz.gov or call the City of Tucson Planning and Development Services Department. You can also find copies, I believe, on the website. Copies will also be available from the Planning and Development Services Department. All of these reports, my recommendation on the special exception and my reports on the final reports on the rezonings, will be sent to the mayor and council. At the scheduled public hearing on each of the cases, the mayor and council will then vote on the matter based on my recommendation along with other factors that they take into consideration. So here's how each of tonight's public hearings are going to proceed. First, a Planning and Development Services representative will give a brief presentation of the case. I'll then ask the applicant if he or she wishes to make a statement or give testimony. After the applicant's presentation, I'll call on those who submitted speaker requests. I'll then open it up to anyone else who would like to be heard. And then after all the public testimony, I'll offer the applicant the opportunity to address any points that have been raised and to give a closing statement. I'll then close the public hearing for that particular case. So with all of that out of the way, I'll now open the public hearing on the first case, TPENT 1224-0028 Irvington Dispensary, West Irvington Road in the C2 zone. And I'll ask Gabriel Slater of City of Tucson Planning and Development Services to begin by presenting a brief staff report.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So this is a request by the Planning Center for approval of a special exception land use to allow a marijuana dispensary. The project site is located at 910 West Irvington Road. The project site includes an existing multi-tenant commercial building on its own parcel within the Placida del Rio Shopping Center. And the applicant wishes to operate their dispensary in a vacant 5,000 square foot suite in the existing building. There are no proposed changes to the building heights or gross floor area. The subject parcel is zoned commercial C2. It's located at the northeast corner of Irvington Road and Interstate 19. The proposal is aligned with the general plan. It meets the development goals of the Plan Tucson Greater Infill Potential Neighborhoods building block. It conforms to all the use-specific standards for a marijuana dispensary at this location. We received no approvals and no protests for this dispensary case. And staff finds that the proposal is consistent with plans and policies and recommends approval, subject to the attached preliminary conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Cassidy, and thank you for hearing our case this evening. My name is Brian Underwood, and I'm a principal here at the Planning Center. We're a local planning and landscape architecture firm. I'm also joined this evening by Lexi Wellett, a colleague here at the Planning Center. Also, we have our client and the applicant in the room, Mr. Andrew Kevelson, as well as his attorney, Tim Kinney. All right, I'd just like to start by saying how excited we are about this project and the opportunity to hopefully reinvigorate the Placida del Rio Shopping Center and fill, actually here, hopefully my presentation is up here. Got ahead of myself. Can you see that there?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So yeah, as I was saying, we're excited about this project and the opportunity to fill this vacant space that you see here on the opening slide of our presentation. It's been vacant since 2019 and vacant for 7 of the last 10 years, along with some other vacancies that are currently there in the center. To give you some background on the project thus far, actually, let me back up here. Sorry about that. 2 computers in front of me. To give you some background on the project thus far, we had our neighborhood meeting about 4 months ago on October 29th and submitted our application just before Thanksgiving and then resubmitted it again in January following some clarification with staff. And our neighborhood meeting at the end of October, we had 4 people that attended that meeting and expressed some concerns about potential impacts on the neighborhood and the ability to attract a new anchor tenant into the center. And luckily, as you'll see on the next slide, Placida del Rio faces Irvington Road. It doesn't connect to the surrounding neighborhood whatsoever. And additionally, there are several local examples of dispensaries harmoniously operating in shopping centers with uses that are similar to those in Placida del Rio. So we know the use can coexist with the businesses that are currently there. So taking a look at where we're located, the site is outlined there in black with the suite proposed for the dispensary shown in yellow. There's a wall around the perimeter of the center, and there's also no direct access from the north side through Mountain Trace Terrace. That's a affordable housing community for seniors that's adjacent to us up there on the north side. And then there are also a couple of Tucson water well sites that you can see called out there on the north side of us, and a future climate controlled self-storage facility that's slated to be built over there on the west side. And there's an alley that separates the neighboring single-family homes over on the east side from the Placida del Rio Center. And then this location is also, over nearly 2 miles away from any other dispensary, and it's about 1/2 mile to 3/4 of a mile from any of those other uses that are listed up there in the upper left corner. So zooming in a little bit more, you can see that the center's other uses labeled there in a kind of counterclockwise pattern range from retail and restaurants to personal services. You also have there in kind of the western half of the larger anchor space. That's what's currently sitting vacant. And then on the eastern half of that is the auto zone that currently occupies that space. There's also a densely vegetated detention basin between our site and the Mountain Trace senior housing to the north of us there. And lastly, as you can see there in the photo, while there's some vacancy that I had mentioned in the center, including that former anchor space that used to be a Cardenas, you can see that there's ample parking throughout the entire center there. Quite a bit of parking and quite a bit of vacant parking spaces there. As Mr. Slater mentioned, and I believe you mentioned it as well, Mr. Cassidy, the property is zoned C2, and a dispensary is an allowable use within the C2 zone, subject to this special exception process and the UDC's use specific standards, which we comply with each and every one of those. And that compliance is listed there in the upper right corner of the slide. So as you can see, we're about half the maximum permitted size. It's the maximum is 10,000. The suite's about 5,000 square feet. We're located obviously within a permanent building there, and we'll adhere to the hours of operation, the customer waiting area requirements. There won't be any outdoor seating or congregation areas. We'll have a full odor mitigation plan and odor mitigation techniques that are employed for the dispensary. And then, as I had mentioned on the previous slide, we do greatly exceed any of those minimum separation requirements from other uses like protected uses like schools, parks, libraries, substance abuse facilities, things like that. And there's not really much to show on the preliminary development plan here, since the dispensary will just be occupying the vacant suite there and outlined in yellow. But as you can see, all the existing walls will remain. We've got a picture there of the western wall and the emergency access gate, just to show what those look like currently, and all that will be staying in its current state. And even though we would just slide right into that existing building, in response to some of the concerns we've recently learned that some of the neighboring tenants have about this particular use, we've also started brainstorming ways that we could potentially spruce up the space in front of the building, potentially with some raised planters and other screening to kind of break that up, because right now it's just a blank kind of continuous open sidewalk out there in front of all the different businesses. And then, of course, as part of this use, it's state mandated that they have security features. There's certainly city requirements that these be secure facilities as well, and so there will be on-site security as well as high-resolution cameras inside and outside of the dispensary that will further enhance the safety and security of the shopping center. And with that, we'll just open it up to any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Underwood. You mentioned that your consideration of sprucing up the front of the building was in response to some discussions with other tenants. What was the nature of those discussions?
So we recently found out through the commercial broker for the center there that a couple of the neighboring tenants, there's a barber shop and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training gym next to us there, that they have some concerns just about the use itself and about how that may impact their business if it's highly visible to their clientele. And so that was our thought, was to potentially work on screening the entrance to the facility, and not have that be quite as open with the other businesses that are currently there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Underwood. I don't have any speaker requests. Do any members of the public wish to testify at this time? If you do, just speak out or use the raise your hand function. All right, hearing none and seeing none. I assume that,
Yes, sir. Can you hear
Yes.
me?
yes, I can now.
Hi, my
Go
name is
ahead,
Marla
please.
Frost Alperstein, and my children, ages 16 and 14, attend the jujitsu, which is right in the corner of where this dispensary wants to go. So I have a lot of concerns because we've been at this gym since 2021 and it opened in 2017. And there are a lot of kids. They start at 4 years old, go into their teens, and then the adults. At different times, they have their classes in the morning, early in the morning, 6 a.m., and classes at night, 6 p.m. Get done around 7:30. So there's a lot of traffic there. We also have in that corner, there's I don't think your people have even visited maybe or hung out around there to see what goes on, but there's a lot of activity, a lot of shops there that people go to besides the barber shop, the laundry. I'm just concerned because children are there. There's a lot of kids that go to this jujitsu academy. So I'm against this dispensary because there are a lot of kids. I am for the children and I don't want this being built there. That used to be a dental place. And in that corner, um, there's a lot of trash that gets collected there because it's in the corner. So there's a continuation of trash. A lot of vagabonds or homeless are in that area as well. The river is not even that far behind the Santa Cruz River across the interstate. There are areas in the very back behind the building that people can hang out. There are homeless people around there. There's also the Texas Roadhouse that is just south of there, where there are a lot of families that come to eat. That place is always, always full. So, again, I am against this dispensary being built and I don't think the people, not you, but the people that are trying to put this together have been to this area to sit there and see what happens. And this is just not a good location for them. I'm not against them opening a business anywhere, but this is not a good spot. Do you want to
Thank
say?
you. Could you give us your address, please? Is it Marla Frost Applestein? Is that what you said?
Alperstein. Yes, I live north Tucson and I travel, my kids travel, my daughter drives herself to these classes. She gets out at 7:30 to 8 p.m. And we live on the north side of Tucson. And this is our preferred gym. My address, I have a mailing address. Would you like that?
Yes, please.
Okay, it is 7090 North Oracle Road, 178-168, Tucson, Arizona, 85704.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Alperstein.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Any other members of the public?
Mr. Husband, Michael Alperstein. I also like to express my concerns. Just having been with the gym for a little while, and I would stay with the kids during their classes. Sometimes I'd be in the facility, sometimes I'd be in my vehicle, just waiting for them. There's a tremendous amount of traffic during business hours, which I think opening that type of business would probably increase the traffic even more and cause a little bit more issues of like safety with the kids kind of walking in, walking out. We do see quite a bit of homeless people, kind of roaming around the front and rear of the buildings itself. Not that we have seen any kind of like security issues with that, but it is something that does, concern us. Like my wife said, we're not against having dispensaries because we understand the legality of having marijuana being legal and other products like the CBD products and things like that. But specifically being near, we consider a school, it's a martial arts school. Um, I know it doesn't, the drug-free school zones don't necessarily encompass martial arts gyms, but this is, a martial arts institution that I think it'd be more beneficial to have something like, well, they had a dental studio for kids next to there before, prior to them closing. Having something like a dispensary, I think would increase, you know, people that, we don't, I don't know how to express it in a kind way. I have no issues with people that use any of those products, but I don't think it presents, I don't think it presents well for the kids to be seeing a dispensary next to where they're training and learning something that is more wholesome. I would feel the same way if they were to open up a bar specific, like a place where a drinking establishment, if you will. So, um, just my wife said, what I said, we do have our concerns and would appreciate reconsidering locating dispensary somewhere away from this particular area. Thank you.
Hello, sir. My
Thank you,
name
Mr.
is
Alberto. Yes, go
my
ahead.
name is Scott Frost Alperstein. I am 14. I am one of the two kids who goes to the Irie Jiu Jitsu from this house at North Tucson. Opening a dispensary there would probably be bring very negative output for both the store and jujitsu, as addictions are very tough to to break, and developing an addiction at such a young age of 4 because there's a dispensary nearby would cause a lot of issues in the near distant future for them. And at my age, I don't think a dispensary would be very appealing to families, new and old, coming there, which would drop the liking of going to that jiu-jitsu, that laundry place, and the Texas Roadhouse nearby, which is a family-based restaurant with a bar, albeit. However, I think a dispensary that close is not a good idea because it is very far away. It's very well, not very far away. It's very close, and the smell of the weed and all the tobacco and stuff will drive some people off. I don't like the smell of weed whenever it is nearby, and I don't think a lot of kids would like it either. A lot of the new parents would not like it. And this would probably hurt the business a lot more than help it. And then the people who come there too, besides all the homeless that are nearby in that area, that dispensary would cause a lot worse of action. Because if a crime happens, that jiu-jitsu is full of kids and adults, and a shooting could happen, and who knows what else would go on because of it. All the risks and crimes. It just isn't a good idea, in my opinion. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. That's all.
Thank you, Scott. Very well said. Thank you for participating. Anyone else?
Sir, I think when we tried to join the meeting using that phone number plus the codes that were given, they did not work. So we had to go through the website that was provided there, and then just finding the link was incredibly tough. So you might not get anybody else. We just happened to be able to get in, but that phone number is not working at all. That was on the information provided for the meeting tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry to hear that. I myself got on through the website, so I don't know whether the number on the notice works or not. Maybe Mr. Slater can respond to that.
I'm gonna try and dial it right now. It's typically the same number for every meeting. So I'm gonna just verify that it's still working.
Okay.
All right, very good. Does anyone else from the public like to testify before I open it up again to the applicant? Mr. Underwood, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. And I'd like to start by saying, we appreciate the concerns that have been voiced here. We understand that there are concerns about, school age children that attend the jiu-jitsu there. I will say, I'll reiterate again that, I know that there was some discussion about, negative activity and homelessness and vagrancy there at the center. And as I had mentioned, this will help reinvigorate the space because it'll fill a vacant space, and we know that attracts that vagrancy. It will also add a lot of security inside and out, and that's not just on the front of the center, but on the back of the center as well. And we'll also have, an on-site security manager as well. So in terms of any kind of loitering, that kind of activity, that won't be tolerated. That won't occur on the property after this use comes into place. And so, in terms of dealing with and cleaning up some of what's currently occurring there at the center, I think this dispensary is a step towards fixing some of that. And then what I would also offer is just some other similar examples around town that if you look at, and there's examples across Tucson or across the region rather, but this first one that I want to key into here is the D2 dispensary at Coleman 22nd Street. And this dispensary also operates in an existing commercial center with very much so a similar mix of uses to what we have in Placita del Rio. So there's several neighboring personal service uses. There's nail and hair salons and a gym there. There's also an opportunity youth center that serves young adults seeking employment and education in the community. And the dispensary, as you can see there in the photos, has a high quality. It's given a lift to the center, increased its aesthetic appeal, and from the outside there, you can see what the property looked like back in January of 2001. That's on the right-hand side, and it's a little hard to see in the photo, but there's a picture a banner in the window there that says grand opening there in January 2021, and then in May 2022. It was under construction for the dispensary. So these are long-standing businesses. Once they come into a center, they stay there, and they help reinvigorate that center. They help the other uses see more spending traffic, and largely you see a lot of the same uses that were there before this dispensary came in. They're still there today. And then another couple of examples that I'd like to point out are the Earth's Healing North at Stone and River. And this one's a little different. It's not necessarily in the traditional shopping center like Placita del Rio or D2 dispensary. But again, you've got a high quality interior and exterior, and it's there amongst a number of other commercial uses, from major gas and restaurant chains to an urgent care and housing back behind it. And then the Soulflower dispensary up at Oracle and Rudisill there is also in a shopping center that has multiple shops, restaurants, hair salons, you name it, other personal and professional services. And it has a kids dance studio there and a math and reading center for children that are located within the same shopping center. And the reading center you know, has children age all the way down to 3 years. So very similar, and these uses have coexisted there for quite some time. And then there's a number of other other examples, as I mentioned, like Saints at the Gaslight Shopping Center. It has a karate gym in the same center there. And then you've got the Curaleaf over by the Auto Mall, where there's barbershops, salons, a gym. They've all come in after the dispensary was there. They located their business in the same space. So I do think that there are ways to make sure that these uses can coexist. And certainly, as I had mentioned before, we're committed to, you know, if we need to meet with folks and discuss some of those ways that we can hopefully mitigate some of those concerns, we're happy to do so.
Mr. Underwood, you mentioned that, for example, Soul Flower at Oracle and Rudisill has a dance studio. Did it have a dance studio there when it opened up? And did the opening up of the Soul Flower have any effect on business, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, but yes, the dance studio and the reading center were both there when the dispensary opened up.
And they're both still there?
And they're both still there, yes.
All right. Okay, well, thank you all for your testimony. I will now go ahead and close the public hearing on TPENT 1224-00028 Irvington Dispensary, West Irvington Road. And at this point, I will now open the public hearing on the second case, TPENT 1224-00029 PCCLT North Linda Avenue, R2 to 03. And I will ask Gabriel Slater of the City of Tucson Planning and Development Services to begin by presenting a brief staff report. And Gilbert, Gabriel, did you check that number and see if it worked?
I did. I called in and it connected just fine. It's a little unclear. I guess it's asking for a pass. Well, the what is it? The agenda that says password, but I think the vocal prompt on the phone number was user ID. So I may update that in the future, but all the information is there to connect, and I was able to connect, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead with your report on the PCCLT case.
Sure, thank you. So this is a request by the Planning Center. This is a request by the Planning Center to rezone 3 residential parcels totaling approximately 0.76 acres from R2 residential to O3 office. The subject parcels are located at 17 North Linda Ave. It's about 200 feet north of West Congress Street. Linda Ave is a local street not defined in the major streets and routes plan. The proposed development plan includes continuing to use the existing house as an administrative building by Pima County Community Land Trust, a local nonprofit, adding a 3,720 square foot housing stability center to the site, an additional 3,790 square foot building for either a co-working space or 4 to 6 small residential units. Additionally, a 1,000 square foot community meeting space building, and then some parking area for all the uses on the site. The co-working residential building is proposed to be 25 feet high, and the other new structures are proposed to be 16 feet high. The Pima County Community Land Trust, they operate out of the existing single-story building. They're requesting to rezone the parcels to increase their ability to provide services to meet the growing demand for affordable housing. This also creates for them some space for them to discuss with potential recipients of the services, like sensitive financial information and things related to their other services. The request is, it conforms to the guidelines of Plan Tucson and the Santa Cruz area plan. Subject to the preliminary conditions attached to the report, staff is supportive of the rezoning request. We did receive 2 protests prior to the cutoff yesterday at 5 p.m. one of them from within 150 feet of the project location and one from outside. Today we received an additional return. It was an approval from the property owners at 53 North Davila, which is that little traffic circle kind of northwest of the project site. And that sums it up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Slater. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Lexi Wellett. I'm with the Planning Center. We're located at 2 East Congress. I do have a brief presentation, so I'll go ahead and get that pulled up. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Well, thank you very much for making the space for us tonight to present our rezoning request for Pima County Community Lands Trust future expansion. I'm also joined this evening by Maggie Amato Tellez, who is the Executive Director of Pima County Community Land Trust, as well as Gigi Aldridge, who is their guru over there, who's been working really closely with me on this project. So just wanted to start really briefly with a quick explanation of who the community or who the Pima County Community Land Trust is. So PCCLT, as we like to call it, is a community-based organization with a long-standing commitment to help low and moderate income individuals build health through home ownership by providing permanently affordable housing and offering programs and services that help with achieving, preserving, and sustaining a home. They were established in 2010 as a result of the economic downturn, with really the impetus to start trying to purchase properties in rapidly declining spaces, such as the West Side there, and really create home ownership opportunities to help stabilize the community and address some of the housing crisis that occurred at that time. So they've been around, active and operating in the Menlo Park neighborhood since this time, and really been offering services and programs that include HUD-approved housing financing or housing counseling, financial counseling, other forms of housing stability counseling. They've established stewardship coordinator programs and have assisted homeowners or folks buying homes with down payments and closing costs. They also have a number of home repair and rehabilitation programs, and then facilitate home buyer education programs. Really, the opportunity here is for them to provide a service to the community, and particularly those who are facing housing challenges. They currently have 7 staff members on site, and they serve over 200 members in the community. And since they've been conceived, or since their inception in 2010, they've provided over 107 permanently affordable homeownership opportunities. Sorry, my computer is all funky right now. They've provided 107 permanently affordable opportunities and another number of other affordable housing options, all primarily within the West Side of Tucson, where their offices are located. So that brings us to the request that's before you this evening, which is looking to rezone where they currently office. So you can see the property highlighted here on the screen in black and yellow. It's about a 0.76 acre site, and Pima County Community Land Trust purchased this from Pima County in 2017 with the idea of directly serving the neighborhood in which they've actively worked within and helped preserve in its character here over the last several years. It's a single-story historic structure that is really limited in size, and through this building, they currently offer housing counseling, all of their administrative operations. They apply for grants, etc. And they also, like I said, they operate everything out of this. And so what they have found over the past several years, largely since COVID and this need for housing, that their business operations are outgrowing the space that they currently have. And so they're looking to rezone their property to facilitate an expansion of their offerings, if you will. And really provide a space that they envision as a community hub that will allow members of the community and their clients an opportunity to not only get the housing counseling that they need, but also provide resources such as internet access, et cetera, because we know that folks who are running into these challenges with housing often struggle with some of those other resources that help get them the resources they need. So that's what our envision is for this space here. So to better serve their mission, they are looking to rezone. Oh, sorry. Let me back up a little bit. So that the site, just to zoom in, they have their existing office on site. It's about 2,000 square feet, give or take. They have an existing carriage house on the site there that recently last summer experienced some damages, and I think that's where it really fueled the need when the carriage house was closed, where they have some of their administrative operations in. When that closed down as a result of storm damage, they found a need that they needed to expand. Also on the site is a Ramada and Adobe oven that the community has worked really closely with PCCLT to install on this property. There's an existing mural wall on the eastern or western side of the property that separates the El Rio facilities to the west there and this property. The site is surrounded to the south by the Pima County Housing Center. And then on the north side of it, there's single family residential. Again, Pima County Community Land Trust has been here since 2017, really enjoys the neighborhood and has looked at as this property as an opportunity to further steward the land here in this neighborhood that they so very much so care about. And so in working through this process and what have you, we've recognized that we need to expand the facility to be able to serve the community. And so that's what brings us to the rezoning request before you. The property is currently zoned R2, which allows for some minor office uses in there. And this was an adaptive reuse program. So that residence that the PCCLT is operating out of has historically operated as an office space for quite some time. And so it's theoretically a non-conforming use in there. And so by rezoning this property as well, we will bring that use into compliance there. So the property, as you can see, in much of the area surrounding it is zoned R2. And then directly south of it along Congress Street, the properties are zoned C3, which is a rather intensive commercial uses which allows for rather intensive commercial uses and building heights up to 75 feet. So what it is we're looking to do here is not only establish a transition into the neighborhood that will ultimately protect this the character of the existing community, and I'll explain a little bit more of that. We're preventing other C2 zonings from coming in by bringing in that, or C3 zoning from coming in by bringing in that O3 zone property, which, as you can see further to the east here, is something that has been developed in and around the neighborhood. So we felt that was a logical transition for the use rather than going from the R2 to the C3, as it would better protect the neighborhood character and what have you. So that's why we're going with the O3 zone in this request. So as Mr. Slater mentioned in his presentation, what it is that we're proposing to do on this 0.76 acre site is to retain the existing 2,000 square foot building that serves as the administrative and all of their other operations currently. We're going to keep it as it is. It's a historic designated property that contributes to the designation in the neighborhood. So our intention is to maintain that and preserve that as we move forward so we can keep the historic designation on the property. And then you'll see on the back side of the property, we're proposing to develop what they call the Housing Stability Center. And the intention of this facility here is it's a 3,700 square foot building that may build off of the existing carriage house, or the existing carriage house, which is not historic, will be demolished and we'll start afresh. It all just depends on funding, architecture considerations, you name it. But the intention of this facility is to provide a space that will offer not only additional employee space and cubicle space, it will also provide a board area, board conference room, because since PCCLT is a nonprofit, it is managed by a board of directors, and currently they don't have adequate space to hold their meetings in the existing facilities they have. So bringing this Housing Stability Center will provide not only more employee space, but also more space for their board to discuss matters. And then it will also feature a resource area that will be open to members of the community to come and access the internet, get counseling, housing assistance, etc. So that's the intention of the Housing Stability Center there. This building is envisioned to be a single story in height with a maximum of 16 feet. And then as you move to the north on that, just beyond the Housing Stability Center, we're looking to develop about 1,000 square foot community meeting space. And the intention for this space is not only to provide PCCLT with some classroom space, because they hold workshops and what have you to educate folks on home ownership opportunities, etc. So they need a larger classroom space to facilitate those types of events. But also in meeting with the neighborhood association, we heard that the neighborhood association lacks communal meeting space. And so the intention of the community meeting space here is to provide the neighborhood with an opportunity to come and facilitate meetings in coordination, obviously with PCCLT. But the idea there is that we're providing a space that will be single story in height as well for the community if needed to have gathering spaces. And then the building on the far west side of the property, this is the only two-story building that we are proposing, and that's largely in line with the building that's just beyond our property line on the El Rio site. That's also a two-story building there. And the idea for this building is to provide either additional co-working spaces for local businesses in the neighborhood or within the community to come and lease a space at an affordable spot, so they could get their business started up, or they can operate out of there. But recognizing that PCCLT is in the business of providing affordable housing opportunities, we're looking at creating a flexible space here that may allow for residential units. So for instance, it could be a retail, or not retail, but some sort of co-working space on the bottom with a residential unit on top, or some configuration of that. But recognizing that what better way to really stabilize the neighborhood and fulfill their mission than by providing opportunities for the community to work and or live in and around this space, which we know is really facing a lot of development pressures as a result of the Mercado and some of the other higher density development going in and around the neighborhood here. In addition to those buildings, we are also proposing to develop a parking area on our site here. Currently, there is no parking on the facility or on PCCLT's property, and it's all currently shared with the Pima County Community, the Pima County Housing Center. And so what our goal here is, as we work through the rezoning and the development plan process, is to work with Pima County Housing Center and Pima County to create more of a functional parking area, because right now the housing center's parking area is non-conforming per code, and so by establishing some of this cross connection with them, we're hoping that we can remedy some of the awkwardness in the parking lot, as well as provide parking for Pima County Community Land Trust on their site. The challenge is if we put it all on our property, it takes up a lot of space, because then you have turnarounds and what have you, and it's a really inefficient use of land. So we're going to be working through that as we move through the process, but this is our ultimate vision. As you can see, the connectivity between the housing center and the land trust will still be provided through the parking areas, as well as through our proposed development. And then we are proposing to install landscape borders along the northwest and east sides of the property there, as required by code. So those will consist of a 10-foot wide landscape border that will contain canopy trees every 33 linear feet, ground covers and shrubs, all in accordance to the city's Unified Development Code. As Mr. Slater mentioned, and I think I've said already, but to reiterate, we are proposing to limit building heights to 1 and 2 stories. So again, really in line with what the neighborhood is suggesting, or what the neighborhood consists of today. As part of this process, just real quick to finish up, I wanted to touch on our public outreach. So we held a neighborhood meeting back in October of last year. Excuse me, that is a typo on the screen. We did not hold it in the future, but we held our neighborhood meeting in October of 2024, and all property owners within 400 feet and all city registered neighborhood associations within 1 mile of the site were invited to the meeting. No members of the public showed up except for a representative from Councilmember Santa Cruz's office. So we had the opportunity to walk them through the presentation, and at that time, they expressed no concerns for the proposal, and in fact expressed quite a liking for the shared parking situation between the two uses, as they've heard from the neighborhood that parking is becoming a problem in that area. So providing more spaces for that may be utilized in off hours is really great for everyone in that space. And then since no one showed up to our meeting, we reached out to the neighborhood association to see if they had heard anything, and they invited us to present the project to the association at their December 12th meeting. So myself and Gigi went to the meeting, and there were several folks both on the board and just in the neighborhood and in attendance. We gave a presentation, and at that time, no opposition was expressed. And I understand, I didn't hear Mr. Slater mention it, but I understand that the neighborhood association has submitted a letter verifying that we did have that meeting and stating that as well. So at this point, we're really excited about the opportunity to further the mission of PCCLT in this neighborhood, and really are looking to continue to be a good steward and work with the neighbors. We know that the mural wall, and they've spent a lot of time working on the property to ensure that it doesn't or hasn't fallen into disrepair or what have you prior to PCCLT taking ownership, and has been seriously involved. And so we are committed to continuing to work with them and advise as we move through the design process. So with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions. Thank you.
So are you saying the mural wall will stay there?
Yes, I sure am, Mr. Cassidy.
All right. At this point, I'll turn it over to public comment. I've seen an approval as mentioned and a couple of protests, but I don't have any speaker requests. So I'll just open it up to any members of the public who wish to testify at this time. I can see Interface Guru with your hand up. Go ahead and
Hi there.
please tell me your name and your address.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Gloria Romano, and I am one of the resident that's right on the edge of the property.
Thank you,
My-
Ms. Romano. I've seen your comment, by the way. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would not want to lose my own housing rights in the effort to house others, which I support tremendously. I'm a business owner. Since COVID, I've had to run my business out of my home. The noise issue is already there for those of us working here. I would like to say that as an internet professional for 25 years, who founded the Arizona Highways website, who founded the ADOT website, and who has given a lot back to the community, I want to say that assuming that people understand Zoom call instructions on a letter is a disadvantage to people living in this community. I can tell you that my neighbor, Marco, on the south of me, and my neighbor on the left probably don't have access to that. So that's just to say, when you do send out instructions for participation, they should be extremely clear, and we shouldn't assume that because all of us or most of us on this call have access to technology that everyone in this neighborhood does, because that is not true. The other thing I would like to say is that this is my only financial asset. I am about to turn 66 years old. I have no retirement funds by no fault of my own because I lost 50% of my business after COVID. I am unable to retire ever. That is my situation. And what I'm concerned about, if I may share my screen, is what impact this will have not only on on the value of the house, but on my own peace of mind. So may I share my screen?
I believe so. Mr. Beal will hopefully allow you to share
They
your
will
screen.
participate screen sharing.
You could go ahead and try now.
Thank you. This is an image from the back of my yard. And I was looking at this, when I bought the house, the El Rio building wasn't here. There was no accommodation made for privacy in my yard. So there's absolutely no window coverings of any kind, which makes me feel very self-conscious every time I go out in my yard. I have no idea who's in that building. And to me, that's a real lack of privacy and security. I also live alone, which makes me very uneasy about that. So you can see, I don't know if you can see this image. You can see the windows at El Rio. So all of this overlooks my property. If you put this building in here, then I'm going to have this other monolith here of windows, and I don't want that. I already feel extremely uncomfortable with the height of the El Rio building. I also am concerned that it's going to make it a lot harder for me to sell my house, because the bottom line is that in order to survive without retirement funds, I may have to sell this house. And I want everyone here to understand, I realize that this is an initiative for the greater good. However, think about what happens to the resale value of my home or Marco's home with a building with like this behind it. I also, and I'm hoping that what's said in this meeting is in confidence, because I have been a consultant to the city of Tucson and to Planning and Development Services, but I have severe PTSD. So I'm living with a number of issues here. Another reason why people may not have come to the meeting in December, and I would like to say to the planning group that assuming that people didn't come to a meeting because they're not interested is not a good idea. In December, there were at least 3 properties on this block still being re-roofed, including mine, because most of us lost our roofs or had severe damage after the storm last July. So all I'd like to say is I'm completely in support of this organization being there. I'm happy that it's there. I probably can use its services. However, asking us to approve something of this height without any consideration for privacy. And this is what I'm wondering about, because I do facilitation for corporations and I've done it for 25 years. I'm wondering why no one came to my house to talk to me. So I understand that everybody's doing everything in good faith, but you got to understand that people on this block work for a living. Some of them have family issues that they're trying to support, like the Davila family. It's Davila, by the way, on the left side of my house. So the fact that people didn't come doesn't mean they don't care. I care very much. And at a minimum, my experience with PTSD is that this decision is already made. So if this decision is already made, I would ask for at least the consideration of having significant privacy considerations for those of us who live in this neighborhood and have done, I think, a pretty good job of holding down the fort when this neighborhood, when I bought this house, there was a burned out house across the street. And I think those of us that are on this block have done a pretty good job of, urban pioneering here, but this to me would really be difficult. And I can't tell you how upset I am about the prospect of losing the little bit of privacy I still have left.
Thank you, Ms. Romano. Before you go, is it simply the height of the western building, or is it the mass of the number of buildings that are proposed?
I have no problem with the number of buildings. Again, I strongly support everything the city of Tucson does. I think it's very progressive. I think the infill is great. The height is the real issue for me. The height is the real issue for me. Again, I had to just put this on the back burner and not think about it once the El Rio building went up, to know that all kinds of people are coming in and out of that building, and they're all seeing right into my yard, into Marco's yard. That's it's very uncomfortable.
So if the zoning were restricted to 1 story for the entire property, including that western building, would you continue to have an objection to this?
No, absolutely not. I love having them here on the block. I love the space that's there. I was really sorry to see the damage there. But I think, we're already feeling a little crowded by some of the stuff that's happening on the other side of the street of Congress.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Romano.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to speak, please.
Go ahead. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Michael Hernandez. I live at 18 North Linda Avenue, directly across the street from the property. I just want to second what we just heard, some of the comments and concerns. I certainly have a number of concerns with the property. Just for everyone's context, I do work and commute to Phoenix every day, and so I don't always have time to attend meetings or catch flyers about meetings, and so I do regret that I missed the opportunity in October to talk about this. I did subsequently send an email to rezoning and to the planning center, which I did not receive a reply to with some of my concerns. However, the issue for me is really the impact on the neighborhood, the climate, the culture of the community here. I moved here in 2004. I just finished serving 10 years in the Marine Corps. I'm a disabled veteran as well. And so what this property has provided to us to date has been very good. Open space, somewhere for me to take my daughters, to go for walks, to find arrowheads. I helped paint that mural almost 20 years ago. I helped clean up that property when it was just an alley and a wall there. I've kind of been a steward on the end of the block here as the last occupied home. But some things have really concerned me with this project. Number one, as mentioned, the parking. Linda Avenue is a very narrow street. You cannot drive 2 cars down the road if there are 2 cars parked on either side. It only allows for 1 motor vehicle to pass the street when there are 2 cars on either side of the road parked, which causes a great issue at the end of the block when you're trying to turn onto Congress, either turning left from Congress onto Linda or turning right onto Linda from Congress. If there's a car in the street, then it causes a little bit of your heart to race a little bit there till you figure out how you're going to fit in there. Second to that is right now, I see the plans that were presented. There's additional parking structure there that they're adding. However, that's covering up some very, very critical land that is open. So when it rains, they have some swales that were dug in there that I helped to dig out almost 20 years ago to catch the rain. I've had to do the same with my property to catch the rain. because what I did notice on a couple of other projects that Tucson had was that they dismissed or did not pay close enough attention to the fact that my house, my neighbors' houses, the houses on Bonita, which are behind me to the east, sit below in elevation to 17 North Linda Avenue, which actually sits above the floodplain. So after one of the hurricanes, they rezoned this land. And so the properties on Linda Avenue on the other side are within the floodplain. And so by adding more asphalt, more concrete, you're creating more runoff, which is going to run down towards our houses. And Linda Avenue, just for some more context for everybody listening, it doesn't have any drains. And so it's actually in front of my house, in front of Linda Avenue. When it does rain and we do get the monsoons, the rain actually collects in front of our homes because it's at a point in the street which doesn't go either north or south to adequately drain. Aside from that, there's been, I talked about the loss of habitat, I talked about the runoff, the parking issues, the increased traffic because of the construction across the street. There is no intersection right now, Congress and Linda. Linda was extended south of Congress. Additionally, there's no sidewalks on that side, directly in front of 17 Linda Avenue, Marco's home, right next to it. There's no sidewalks. I don't know how the ADA compliance will work. The sidewalk that's in front of my house is very narrow. At that, in addition, I want to just share my camera, turn my camera on for a second. I want to show you another issue when I talk about culture, climate, community of the, how can I turn my camera on? Apologize.
Usually in the lower left-hand corner.
Got it.
There we go.
So this is me. You can see 17 Linda behind me. Beautiful structure, well maintained. I don't have any qualms with the quality of work that's going on there. But recently they did redo some work at the housing center, and you can see immediately the peak quiet and culture of the community, which was quiet and in compliance with the city's relationship with our astronomy network and the universities here, is just completely blown up. It's like living across the street from a football field or a lit up soccer field at night. And so now where it ends, this section I'm showing here, this is where that new parking lot's going to go. So now you're just extending this hideous lit up space and extending it even further, so it's directly in front of my house. I'm now just walking backwards here, but the land that's here in between the main structure and the structure at the end of the property there's some beautiful swales here. We've got natural habitat. We've got some peace. There are our new neighbors. We're going through a lot of gentrification, and neighbors often walk through this street because, as you can see, I don't know if you can see because it's so dark, there are no sidewalks here. So people do walk in the street back and forth through Linda. And so that's just a little bit of context and concern that I have. But outside of the main infrastructure concerns and safety for folks with not having any sidewalks and the lack of drainage is just, it really disheartens me to see that even if it's one property, the history of Tucson, we've seen that entire communities, especially here in Menlo Park and Barrio Hollywood, across the freeway, near Carrillo Elementary School, where my daughters go to school, in the name of progress, and sometimes good progress. I'm not against progress, but we've got to be mindful. And so even one more rezoning of a residential property for me is too much. I feel like the map that was shown earlier with the C3 properties, I think that's a good line. I think this is a beautiful boundary as it is. I think there's more than enough properties and opportunities for a growing company to move into. But my concern is I've been here 21 years. This summer, I want to see my daughters take this house off once a day, and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years from now, them not have to worry about transient, people moving in, security issues, more industrial lighting. We just want to preserve the neighborhood as it is. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. So if I am understanding your position, you simply would like for the rezoning to be denied entirely, not simply restricted to one story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's far too important to have this open space in the neighborhood. especially when you consider on the opposite side of this block, on the opposite side of El Rio Health Center, there's actually a community garden, which we had hoped to get on this side as well. But as it is, it serves as a wonderful buffer and open space, not just for wildlife, but for all of us residents as well. And I just want to say, had I had the opportunity to attend and protest, I would have. My calls did go unanswered, except I did reach somebody at the planning, at the city of Tucson eventually, but it wasn't the person I needed to talk to. But yeah, certainly I want to reiterate, I've been in education as a special education teacher for 20 years as well. I live directly across the street. I see these wonderful people going in and out all day. When I am home, and nobody's knocked at my door, nobody has extended a hand. I certainly have been at times in the last 20 years in need of some support, but that effort hasn't been made. So I don't know beyond that how much I could support something like this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hernandez. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to be, from the public, wish to be heard? If so, just please speak up. I'm not seeing any names, any hands, I'm sorry. All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and turn it over again to the applicant. Ms. Wellott, would you like to make a closing presentation and a response?
I just would like to first start by Mr. Cassidy thanking both Gloria and Michael for coming out and expressing your concerns. I really appreciate it. And one thing that I wanted, you know, I failed to mention, I realized that is what we had discussed with the Menlo Park Neighborhood Association was through this process, as we move through the design of it, we want to get feedback from the neighborhood to ensure what it is we are doing exactly jives with what folks want to see in and around that space. As you know, Mr. Cassidy, as part of the entitlement process, we ask for what it is that we think is you know, best suited for their ultimate vision and the you know, into perpetuity of this site. And so that's why we've planned for the growth that we have. But the reality is as PCCLT is an organization that is a nonprofit and relies solely on grant financing and funding to serve their mission, the design of the facility itself has not been fully flushed out because we're not there yet. And so that's what we discussed with the neighborhood, is that as we progress through the design of this, is that we are open to continuing the dialogue with the community. With respect to the drainage comments that Michael mentioned here, we full and well recognize that the neighborhood has done a lot of work in making sure that space has been beautified over the many years that folks have lived in and around that space, and our goal is to preserve that in the best fashion that we can. So part of the challenge with putting sidewalks in along Linda Avenue there is the destruction of existing vegetation. So our goal is it's a fine balancing act, and that's why you see the pedestrian circulation routed through the parking lot as opposed to along the roadway. And that was intentional so that we could preserve those mature trees that exist there. And then as far as drainage goes, as this part of the development process, the city requires that all drainage be accommodated on site. So we have to, as we build moving forward, we have to honor the existing conditions and from a drainage standpoint on the site. So whatever naturally falls on the site today, we're responsible for not only capturing that, but any other runoff generated from impervious surfaces on that. And then we are required to meter them out in their existing condition. So while the detention and retention basins may be reconfigured on the site, they will be put back in place to ensure that the drainage situation that Michael is speaking of is dealt with there. As far as parking goes, currently Pima County Community Land Trust, most of their parking needs come from an appointment basis only, and that's how we will move forward in operation into the future. And so the parking that we are showing on our site is what we believe is necessary for the employees into the future, as well as the clientele moving in and out. And then in the event of those special events where maybe not all of the parking can be provided, where we're hoping to create that synergy with the Pima County Community or Pima County Housing Center to ensure that there is adequate parking. And then what we heard through the neighborhood association meeting was that the neighborhood really needs additional parking because they have a lot of problems in and around the spaces there for folks to park. And so that was something we discussed as a benefit for the neighborhood. And then as far as I just wanted to hit on Gloria's concerns about privacy. We full and well understand and respect your concern there, and we'll be looking, as I mentioned, to really design with that in mind. I know the city has standards in place, but that's why we've oriented the building in the fashion that we did, so that the long side of the building is directly facing our development and the El Rio, as opposed to positioning it so that the long side faces the neighboring property. So, but that's all to say that the 2-story is an idea that we have to better further what PCCLT's mission is for that property, and really provide a space where not only could members of the community, if they need a co-working space, but also to provide more affordable housing opportunities. It's not a shelter, it's not temporary housing, it would be a permanent housing situation. And why we felt the 2-story was appropriate adjacent to El Rio was because in the existing entitlements today, you can go up to 25 feet in height. That is a 2-story structure. So theoretically on that site, if this didn't happen and PCCLT had to move away to find a site that's better suited for them, this site would be, theoretically put on the market and could be developed as multifamily apartments with 2-story in a 2-story configuration. Obviously the existing historic structure would stay, but the back half of that could develop in a different fashion. And so that's what we were really trying to do, was find the balancing act to not only serve the needs and the potential needs of the community moving forward, but also serve as that transition from that C3 zone property just south of us and what's happening even more intensive on the south side of Congress Road, and serve as that transition. I know Maggie and Gigi and the organization are looking to stay there long term. They don't want to move, and they want to be a good steward to the neighborhood. And so I think it would be appropriate to add a condition to the rezoning that suggested, as we move forward into the development plan phase, that we offer to meet and discuss our plans with the neighborhood so that we can all be well aware of what that looks like. I also do, just to keep in the culture and community that and preserve the good work that the neighborhood did, I do believe it would be reasonable to add a condition to suggest that preserving the mural wall on the west side of the property would be reasonable to us. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was this, this notion of community space and beautification. And I know Maggie and Gigi, we've talked about this a lot, is, since all of this relies on grant funding, what do we do in the interim of, in the transition periods? And so some of the things we have talked about are, doing some other types of community benefit things, like a community garden or some other, a space for folks to just come in and continue to enjoy the property like they have in the past. So with that, I wanted to just ask Gigi or Maggie if there was anything the two of you wanted to add before we close up here tonight.
I want to make a couple of quick comments. So many years ago, maybe 20, I also participated in painting that mural. Hi, Michael. And my grandson, who's now 22, was like a 3-year-old, and he painted that as well. And I, at one point, owned a house on 40 North Linda that was unfortunately vandalized and set on fire long before the current properties there. So, and I live in Menlo Park, so I have a real affinity for that site and the neighborhood. And you know, when we first were in our building, neighbors came over, and the county donated some desert vegetation. Neighbors came over and helped plant it. So I think we have a history of embracing the neighborhood in, you know, we're just very conscious of making sure that our presence there is inclusive. I appreciate the comments everyone's made. I think, like Lexi said, as we move forward, we will certainly make sure that we outreach in other ways as well as we come up with go through the design process. But yeah, I mean, we fully intend to stay there and to have a respectful presence in the neighborhood. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Gigi. And that's all from us there, Mr. Cassidy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Willett. Mr. Hernandez also mentioned, you know, the expansion of the light pollution from the south. Are you willing to accept some kind of restriction on lighting of the parking lot or something along those lines? Or what is your response to the concern about that expansion of light pollution?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Cassidy. So as new development goes into play, we will be required to follow the City of Tucson outdoor lighting code, which is actively being updated right now. And so we'll be in compliance with that. All of our lights will be downward directed and what have you. Some of the challenge with outdoor lighting in parking areas, is the safety aspect of it and making sure that we keep the lighting appropriate there so unwanted activities don't happen. That said, those lights are really bright. So I think we could be, you know, open to looking at some dimming of the lights just to, you know, a security feature, because I understand that's a challenge. But Gigi, jump in, please, but I feel like they're not going to have as many lights, and lights are often a function of safety and security on a site, and we'll do our best to dim them, you know, after hours or if they're not needed. But I think there is that fine balancing act of not making it completely dark so unwanted activities occur in those spaces.
Yeah, and those aren't our, you know, those lights were put up, I want to say 9 months ago by the county, by Pima County. So those are not our lights. And, you know, I don't know, we've sort of talked about, yeah, that they are bright and what could we do, and could we have a different type of lighting? Could we, you know, what makes sense? There was a lot of activity on that site, which is why they did that. But, you know, we're certainly open to looking at code and conversation with the neighbors if that is something that, you know, obviously they don't want to see. We only conduct business right now in the daytime. So occasionally, if there was, say, a neighborhood association meeting or something on site, you know, we would have lighting, and maybe it would be something that was on some sort of timer, something like that. So yeah, but definitely those are considerations we would be willing to look at moving forward.
So perhaps Mr. Cassidy, in lines to the zoning condition of discussing to talk about the ultimate design of the building, perhaps something we might add is discussing the lighting and what our plan for lighting is so that we can, again, I don't think we want to create a nuisance for the neighborhood or exacerbate light pollution. It's just a matter of security. I think as Gigi mentioned, there was some unwanted activity occurring on that site, and I know that to be true just in the industry. So, but we're certainly open to making sure that we don't have those bright lights. And if there are other recommendations of dealing with security or what have you, we're open to hearing those. But we'll certainly discuss those with the neighbors as we move through the process.
Ms. Willett, if I'm hearing you correctly, then though you are not willing to accept a one-story restriction across the entire property, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we'd like to keep the flexibility there unless Gigi, you'd like to say otherwise.
It's early in the process. We wanted to, what we had talked about during the initial design process was kind of buffering El Rio, the El Rio Center. So it's sort of a step down from the center. And I believe our building height would be lower than theirs. So it's stepped down to that back building and then one story on the other three buildings. And we thought that if we located that second story at the back of the property, it would be, certainly less intrusive to the neighborhood. And I do understand the concern about looking into yards. And, we've done several development projects. We're always very conscious of the neighborhood and where window placement is. And that would certainly be something on that north edge of that building that we could look at having, patio or window that would overlook the neighbors. So we are open to solutions, but I think in order to maximize our ability to provide housing and services, we really would like to have the option to have two stories.
Well, as you heard the testimony, the concern though by Ms. Romano was that, the El Rio building went in without really the feedback that she would have liked to have given. And so having a transition from a particularly high building is not necessarily what she would want. And I mean, the concern that I would have as in terms of making a recommendation is that, as you know very well, this is the time for determining the zoning entitlement. You see what I'm saying? In other words, once you have the zoning entitlement, how much negotiating power do the neighbors have? So
Mr.
would
Cassidy,
you be willing to accept a condition that says that you will not build a second story unless and until, there is acceptance from the immediate neighbors or something along those lines? In other words, so that there's an actual ability to block that second story if you can't get the agreement.
would it also be possible, Mr. Cassidy, just thinking out loud here on what a possible condition could be? Could we create a condition that, perhaps suggests that any windows on the second story, like you couldn't have windows or, because I'm just trying to think just thinking out loud, what if, for instance, we put entries and everybody would access the buildings from the west side of it. So let me just share my screen so I can think out loud here with you. So I'm looking at this building here. What if, and the way it's designed, it's not it, but we could discuss this through a condition. What if instead of these buildings being accessed on the second story, they were accessed on this side, and then any window that was provided on a second story, they had to be clear story windows so that they weren't windows that anybody could visibly, look out of, but it provided that natural light in. So typically a clear story window is a window that's about 6 or 7 feet up on the wall. It provides the natural light in, but it does not allow for that space. So we could suggest something that, perhaps on the second story, clear windows could only be provided. Balconies would not be able to be provided facing the north and west or east, excuse me. Something to that effect to control the privacy concern from those residents or whatever occurs on the second story, so there aren't windows looking into the neighboring properties, but we still provide that flexibility moving forward. And I think, again, it's, we come from a position of today, if we were to look at some of this in an R2 space and we didn't rezone all of it, we could do that 2-story building without that input that you're mentioning, just like El Rio did. So trying to find that balance there, but I wonder if through some design considerations, we might be able to suggest that, privacy mitigation shall be included on a second story, and that can come through no balconies on, the north and west facing sides, no outward looking windows facing the north and west or north and east side, etc.
All right. Thank you very much for the conversation and the interaction in trying to work some of these issues out. At this point, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on TPENT 1224-0029, PCCLT North Linda Avenue R2 to 03 zoning. And at this point, I will go ahead and open the public hearing on the third case, TPENT 1024-0020, Vacant Lot LLC, East 22nd Street, SR to RX2. And I'll ask Carver Struve of City of Tucson Planning and Development Services to begin by presenting a brief staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. This is a request by the WLB Group on behalf of the property owner, Vacant Lot LLC, to rezone a 4.27 acre parcel from SR Suburban Ranch to RX2 Residence Zone. The applicant proposes to develop 5 single-family homes on a currently vacant site. The property is located on the north side of East 22nd Street, approximately 1,600 feet west of Houghton Road. There are 3 previous rezonings on surrounding sites. All 3 were rezonings from SR Suburban Ranch to R1 or to RX2, excuse me, residents. The proposed lot sizes are consistent with surrounding development. Existing roadway utility infrastructure would serve the site, and all city drainage requirements must be met as part of the development plan approval process. The property is within the existing neighborhoods building block in Plan Tucson, which supports infill development. The property is also located within the Pantano East area plan, which supports and encourages the development of a variety of housing types and supports residential infill. Based on neighborhood feedback, a condition was added to limit building heights to no more than 1 story or 20 feet. Also, conditions related to additional building setbacks and privacy screening are also noted, as are conditions related to right-of-way dedication and coordination with the city's Department of Transportation and Mobility, as well as planning and development services on design of road improvements. I do want to go back and clarify that those surrounding zonings were from SR to R1 for the record as well. And then note that there were 4 approvals from 3 separate property owners that were submitted, and 1 comment email was also received. This includes 1 additional approval that arrived via US mail today. Based on this, the Planning and Development Services Department recommends approval of the rezoning request, subject to the preliminary conditions. And so in conclusion, this proposal is in compliance with both Plan Tucson and the Pantano East area plan, and a plan amendment is not required. Subject to compliance with the preliminary conditions, approval of requested rezoning is appropriate. We did receive 4 approvals and a comment email, and Planning and Development Services recommends approval of the requested rezoning subject to the preliminary conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Struve. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
I do. Good evening. Rob Longacre from the WLB Group, representing the rezoning request this evening. I'm joined by Liz Madsen, who works with me at WLB and worked with me in the preparation of this application. We appreciate your time this evening, Mr. Cassidy, to consider our rezoning request and look forward to your recommendation. Also, many thanks to City of Tucson staff for their work that was done bringing this case before you this evening. I'm, of course, here on behalf of the property owner. The property owner name is Vacant Lot LLC. The manager of that LLC is actually a local landowner, lives in the immediate area, and had lived there for a number of years. With your permission, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see my screen now.
Yes, I can see it.
Great. Just briefly wanted to touch on a few things. As Mr. Struve mentioned, of course, any rezoning request needs to have the foundation of compliance with policy plans. This request this evening does comply with the Pantano area or East area plan. It also complies with Plan Tucson. The intent of the property owner is to achieve RX2 zoning with the intent of future subdivision of the property to provide for 5 new residential single-family lots. It's a true infill project. The makes use of existing infrastructure in the area that has capacity to serve the proposed community. This includes roads, utilities, parks, commercial services, medical facilities, and school systems, all in the immediate area. All right, on my screen is the preliminary development plan. I'd like to just touch on a few things about this plan. The plan itself, of course, you can see there are the 5 lots that are proposed. The lots would be accessed via cul-de-sac that you can see in the middle portion of the property. The size of the lots actually ranges from about 28,000 square feet to about 46,000 square feet. And as mentioned by Mr. Struve, via interaction with the neighbors and community input, we have limited the height of future homes on this property to 20 feet to be consistent with heights in the immediate area. We've also increased the setbacks on the perimeter of the property. We have a 30-foot setback on the north and west and south boundaries and 25-foot setback on the east boundary. The UDC, just FYI, requires 20 feet. You can see in the southern portion of the property down by 22nd Street, there will be a 10-foot wide landscape buffer in accordance with provisions in the UDC. Also in the southern portion of the site, you see an area that's labeled future right-of-way. As part of this rezoning, the property owner will give the 35 feet of additional right-of-way that's required for future improvements to 22nd Street. You can see this blue line that goes through the site. That is the Wrightstown Banff Wash. Carries about 50 CFS during a regulatory event. This wash will largely be left in its natural condition. Flows exiting the site will not exceed pre-development flows, thereby ensuring that no downstream property owner will be harmed by any additional runoff. A basin will be constructed in this general area to ensure that downstream property owners are protected. I know that one of the correspondences that was received by the city is from Mr. Doug Cahill. He lives to the west of the site in the subdivision by the name of Sunset Cove. I've met with Mr. Cahill on the property, and I've spoken with him previously, and I believe he's on the call on the meeting this evening. We can assure him that the basin that you see in Sunset Cove to the west will not be used for this property. Water will be held on this property in full compliance with City of Tucson regulations to ensure that increased runoff from development will not leave this site. We're happy to keep Mr. Cahill informed as this project moves through the process so that he can be assured that there will indeed be measures to ensure that this happens. We've also committed to making every effort possible to retaining existing mature healthy vegetation on the periphery of the site. And at the time that the houses are actually designed and developed, and as part of another condition that's being proposed by staff, there will be privacy walls of a minimum of 5 feet in the rear living spaces of the homes. I mentioned the access point on 22nd Street. That access point will be designed in accordance with City of Tucson standards to provide safe and efficient access to and from the site. I've actually been in touch recently with Kimley Horn. They are the engineer that's working on the plans for 22nd Street, and we'll continue to coordinate with them to ensure connectivity of this project in accordance with City of Tucson standards. That project design, by the way, as I understand it, is just at the 30% design phase. And that roadway 22nd improvements are planned to have 4 travel lanes, a center median, bike lanes, street lights, and sidewalks. All utilities are available to the site. Will be served by Tucson Water, Pima County Wastewater, Tucson Electric Power. Neighbor input, we actually held 2 neighborhood meetings on this project. The first was in July of 2024. We had about a dozen neighbors attend the meeting, had a good discussion about the proposal. A few things of note. I already mentioned it, but we did agree to a 20-foot height restriction on the homes. We also discussed the additional setbacks that I discussed a moment ago. I also discussed some of the vegetation efforts that I mentioned a moment ago about preserving to the maximum extent possible vegetation along the site periphery. And then if we had much discussion about the hydrology. So residents can be assured that this site will be designed in compliance with City of Tucson standards and no harm will occur to downstream property owners. We have read the staff report. We have reviewed the conditions, recommended conditions of approval. On behalf of the property owner, I could say that we do agree with them and would be happy to accept them. We respectfully appreciate your consideration, Mr. Cassidy, and look forward to your recommendation, hopefully for approval. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions or have any further discussion if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Longacre. You mentioned that there were 2 neighborhood meetings. The first was in July 2024. When was the second one?
We held a follow-up meeting in November of last year. We held a follow-up meeting. It was actually the initial meeting was in person. The second meeting in November was a virtual meeting. We set that up just to see if there's any other follow-up questions or comments on the project. And actually, nobody from the neighborhood attended the meeting.
All right. Thank you, sir. I have received 1 speaker request for this case from Douglas Kaywood. Mr. Kaywood, if you're on the line, go ahead and unmute and make your presentation. And by the way, I have reviewed your written comments, and I have your address as 10041 East 22nd Street.
1141.
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. First of all, someone mentioned earlier in one of the meetings about the phone number issue. I had an issue on the phone number also. There's like an 11-digit number that you have to put in. And for some reason, the phone was, the message was cutting out. I would give a full 11-digit number and they would say, we only got 4 digits or 2 digits in some cases. So then I had to read it back really quickly. And finally, when I read the numbers really quickly, it was able to put me into the system. But anyone with eye issues or trying to read off your page is going to have trouble.
I appreciate it.
My
Sorry
name is-
for the trouble.
My name is Douglas Kaywood, not Cahill. And
I'm
I live
sorry,
at
sir.
1141 South Sun Cove Drive. I'm a homeowner that lives to the west of the property. I don't have the technology of being able to show the plat back up on the screen, but I think the powers that be, you and Mr. Stu probably have the original pamphlet that you guys sent out with the actual photo of the property, of the overhead photo of the property. So I'm on the HOA board for Sunset Cove, but I'm not speaking for the board. I'm speaking for myself. And I live in the, if you're able to see the plan view, I live in the third house north of 22nd Street that borders the property on the west. We have had good rapport with the homeowner that is requesting, yeah, thank you, is requesting the rezoning. We've been in contact with the company that's facilitating the rezoning through Rob Longacre, who just spoke. And actually he came out and we walked the property. Original plan they had was to put detention basins just on the north side of 22nd Street, which would have been uphill of the wash that crosses the property. You can see the wash that runs generally from the right side. Yeah, there's the pointer going up across, and where it enters our basin, our basin, retention basin, starts right about the fourth house north of 22nd Street, my neighbor. And then it runs up to the north and then exits in onto Sun Cove Drive, exits left there at Sun Cove Drive. So we've had good rapport with the owner and with Mr. Longacre. As previously mentioned, we've talked about the single-story dwelling concern, and we got that issue resolved. My biggest concern has been the increase in water that will drain from the property, and Mr. Longacre explained in more detail than I've previously heard about how they're going to mitigate that and how they're going to actually prevent any water. I think that's what he said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he mentioned that there would be no more flow than previous, and that their plan was to retain as much, if not all, of the water that they could. And that was my biggest concern that I had not had answered until tonight. And I feel very confident in what Mr. Longacre has said as far as how they plan to mitigate that issue. And since most of my concerns have been covered, I would just hope that I understand that part of the process of the rezoning is that the city engineers do go over the hydrology issues. And I would just hope that we can highlight that issue as my neighbors and HOA is speaking to my neighbors. Our biggest concern of the property is the fact that there's the potential for more water flow due to the covering of existing ground cover with streets, patios, driveways, and houses that will create more runoff. So as long as that is mitigated, and that's what Mr. Longacre says is being done, this property has my full support in the rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Kaywood. I'm sorry for having stated your name wrong if I did that. So I believe that the existing city requirements are that the post-development flow off-site cannot exceed the pre-development or the pre-existing flow off-site. Perhaps Mr. Longacre can clarify that when he comes back on. But at this point, I wanted to ask if any other members of the public wish to testify at this time. All right, hearing none, I will turn it back over to Mr. Longacre.
Thank you, Doug, Mr. Kaywood. You have my information. Feel free to contact me anytime. And just to let you know, right, the next step is what's called the development package. Those are the detailed plans that will be prepared to develop the site, and that will involve also the full drainage report that's required. That will detail how much water is actually entering the site, leaving the site, and entering your subdivision. It will also quantify how much additional water will be generated by impervious surfaces. And that calculation is how the basin is sized to make sure that it can be held so that it ensures that the same amount of water leaving the property in the same place, the same velocity will continue to occur. So I'm happy to share all those documents with you when they're prepared so that you and your fellow residents in Sunset Cove can be assured that no harm will occur by the development of this site.
Okay, I look forward to that information.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on TPENT 1024-0020, vacant lot LLC, East 22nd Street, SR to RX2. And I want to thank everybody for making a presentation this evening. And everybody have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.